Kosi revaya, ahto vachesed yedifuni kol yemei chayai, v'shaveti bebeit Adonai leorech yamim. The words of the 23rd Psalm, Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. Giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit, and guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We welcome all of you who came in person to be with the family today. And we also welcome everyone on the internet. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. My name is Rabah Mas from Congregation Shaarey Zedek, and it's my great honor to be here officiating the funeral services for Beverley Manishen, Zichronah Livracha, of blessed memory, who was also known to the Jewish people by her Hebrew name, Todah bat Yaakov Masha, Zichronah Livracha. She was the daughter of Jack and Mary Stein, of blessed memory, the wife of the late Melvin Manishen, Zichronah Livracha, for some 59 years. The mother of Dr. Wayne and Carol, Jeffrey and Joanne, Jim and Joy. The grandmother of Joshua, Aaron, Jacqueline, Sarah, and Ira. Beverley passed away on Tuesday, May 10th, peacefully, at the age of 95. Beverley was a woman who lived for her family and her friends. In fact, many friends were to her like family. Life without friendship was unthinkable to the rabbis. Ecclesiastes wrote, "Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falls, for he has not another to help him up. That's true. Friends offer each other help, loyalty, protection, support, and guidance. Judaism defines friendship as one of the primary relationships in life, a tie that at times exceeds that which bond blood relatives. Judaism also believes in the importance of family. Acknowledge that someone will always be there for us through the good times and the bad times. Something that is great for the soul. Family provides encouragement, understanding, hope, comfort, advice, values, morals, ideals, and faith. Beverley was very close to her family and developed a special relationship with all of them. He was also a very sincere, honest, and direct person. These great virtues were extolled by the rabbis, especially the virtue of honesty. Truth, taught Rabbi Hanina, is the seal of God himself. These honest people were looked upon by the rabbis as idolaters. And according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, honesty is one of the three pillars on which the world rests. The other two are justice and peace. According to the Shulchan Aruch, the central code of Jewish law, it is an important mitzvah to eulogize the deceased properly. That's why Judaism insists that if possible, a family member should be the one eulogizing the dead. The Hebrew word for eulogy is hesped, and we read about this word for the first time in Genesis chapter 23, verse 2. And I quote, "And Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came lispod et Sarah, to eulogize Sarah and to cry over her." The other best known hesped, eulogy, is in King David's lament over Saul and Jonathan in the second book of Samuel, chapter 1, verses 17 to 27. The eulogy accomplishes the biblical commandment of Ve'ha'avta l'reacha kamocha, loving one's fellow as oneself, since a heartfelt eulogy is a great act of loving kindness. You may have also noticed that Wayne, Jeff, and Jim are wearing a ripped black ribbon on their left lapel. This branding is a striking expression of grief at the loss of a loved one. This is also a biblical tradition. When our patriarch Jacob believed his son Joseph was dead, he tore his garments. Likewise, we are told that King David and all the men with him took hold of their clothes and rent them upon hearing of the death of Saul and Jonathan. Job, too, in grieving for his children, stood up and rent his clothes. I'm telling you all this because Beverley took Jewish tradition very seriously. She belonged to the Shaarey Zedek synagogue, and Jewish life was extremely important to her. She lived for her family, and today her family is here observing all this Jewish tradition to honor her memory. That's why I would like to invite now Jim and Jeffrey to come forward to eulogize their mother.
Well, you know, the hardest part about saying goodbye to a parent is that you're saying goodbye to somebody that you've known longer than anyone else in your life. And because my mom lived to such an advanced age, the memories are overwhelmingly great and special. So I have to, when thinking about what to say, I have to send some acknowledgement to my cousin, Jane Pletz of California, who's watching. Thank you, Janie, for a message that she sent to me the other day, distilling the essence of Beverley into just a few words so that I could find some good bones to hang a few comments on. And about Beverley, I'll call her Bevy. We called her Bevy. Janie wrote, she had moxie, she had style, she was loving, she was honest, she was devoted, and it was easy to see how Melvin became so captivated by her, as did all of us. Well, I think I could actually end from that and just walk off. But my mom wouldn't have wanted that. She insisted on value for every input. So let me just take a moment or two, I'm cognizant of time, a moment or two and just kind of fill in a little bit about her life. About 7 weeks ago, I received a phone call from her. She was in her own house, she was running her own life. Come over, I have the New York Times for you, and I have a few other things. And I walked over there and I picked up her New York Times, which she read very, very carefully all the time. And of course, there were the bags of the other goodies and the gifts. If you're on the receiving end of gifts from her, you know what I'm talking about. And she was fine. And then shortly after, there was a setback and she went into the hospital and the switches just turned off quietly. She had a wonderful life, lived to a great age, and we're just so thankful of everything that she provided to us over the years. She was born from very interesting stock. As the rabbi said, her mother, Mary, was a first-generation Canadian, born in Hawkesbury, Ontario, grew up in Calgary and settled in Winnipeg. Her maiden name was Galley, and she came from a very, very interesting group of people. There were 6 siblings, all of them independent, free thinkers. They were opinionated, they were interesting, they looked at the world, they evaluated and debated things. We loved them, and they were young enough that they came to a lot of our simcha, so we got to know them very well. On the other side, her father Jack was a proud Londoner, and he had a subtle, warm wit. He was a detailed gentleman. He was in the insurance business, and he understood that you had to dot every I and you had to cross every T in order to serve your clients, and he ran his life that way. And on January the 4th of 1927, along came their only daughter, Beverley. Adorable little girl. And I never really knew with an only child whether that contributes to a person going through life and reaching out. But I think it might have in this case, because the one quality that Bevy had was she always reached out. She was reaching out all the time. Even when she spoke to you, she was reaching out and trying to engage you. When you were around her, she was trying to find out what turned your crank. What were you interested in that she might be able to instill in this person the same zest for living that she had? This was always the case, especially with friends. The rabbi mentioned she was devoted to family and friends. Well, I have to add hyphens in there because family and friends. Friends were joined to the hip with our family. They became family. We got to know them well. We loved them, each and every one of them. Well, when my mom was born, she grew up in River Heights. She was popular amongst her friends. She had exceptional musical talent, and I'm going to just tell you something that you might not know about her. At the age of 12, she was already a formidable pianist, and she won the top instrumental award at the Manitoba Music Festival, performing some pieces that were very demanding. I remember even the sounds of her playing when I was a little. Chopin Fantasy Impromptu, Mendelssohn G minor piano concerto, sections of Rhapsody in Blue, played with complete technical security and flair. She did all this. Well, the adjudicator at age 12, when she won, was the famous British composer pianist Arthur Benjamin. And after he awarded her the trophy, he called over my grandmother and he said, you know, you have a very talented little girl here. If you like, I can kind of set the wheels in motion and arrange for a scholarship for her to come and study at the Royal College in London, which was London's Juilliard. Well, my grandmother, she thought it through, and she said, well, you know, the financial issues and this would uproot our family and it would be a tremendous sacrifice, and thank you, but I don't think We can do that, which was a polite way of saying that little South End Jewish girls didn't do that sort of thing in the late 1930s. Well, on behalf of Jeffrey and Wayne, I'm glad that's what transpired. So, she met Melvin, and she was swept off her feet, as he was for her. She married at age 20. They were married for 59 years. You talk about a match made in heaven, that was it. I see that term, and of course, parents, they just kind of flash before us. She was totally devoted to him. She made his life as easy as it was possible. I remember so many instances. The rough and tumble world of business, she made it easy for him to be able to absorb all the twists and the turns. She was with him every step of the way. She shared in the successes. Even times when he had other things on his mind and he'd walk out of the bathroom, left the water running, she just sort of immediately appeared to shut the faucets off. Everything was done. Every I was dotted and every I was dotted and every T was crossed. She had these qualities from both sides of her own parents. Now, of her parents, Jeffrey, Wayne, and I were very fortunate because when I came along, my grandparents were in their mid-40s, and they too lived to great ages. So we had two sets of parents. They lived a few blocks away from us. Everything we did, they were sort of there for us. They were tremendous help. Now, her friends, of course, her friends meant everything to her. And the interesting thing there was that we were always included in every activity that their friends were invited to, whether it was parties, sometimes even trips. Now imagine if you're a parent, so you want to go away on a trip with another couple. You want to have a little break from all the caregiving. Well, in my parents' case, sure, they did that, but then they would say to us, come on along, come with us. How many parents would do that sort of thing? We were always invited to come to the parties, downstairs, to the meals, the restaurants. But there was a caveat. When we met their friends, we were encouraged to get to know them, but it was Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, Doctor. They had station. We hadn't earned the right to a first-name relationship yet. That came a lot later. And I must say, even today, when I meet the friends who are still with us, fortunately, I still going in the back of my mind, is this Mrs. So-and-so, is this Mr.? It goes back a long, long way. Now, Palm Springs was a very, very special place to my parents. They just loved it. And it was my mother's vision. My dad, actually, if you knew him, he was a little bit of an introvert. He just enjoyed sitting and reading a book sometime, and she drew him out and she got him involved in things. Well, they had gone to Palm Springs, but in 1970, my mom went down there and she said, well, I want to experience Palm Springs kind of more as a resident than just as a transient. So she found this place, which was a nice development just on the edge of town. She called my dad down. My dad looked at these 3 units and sand as far as the eye could see. And he said, I don't know, wouldn't it be better just to come and stay in a hotel? She said, no, just wait, it will grow, and the family will love coming here. Oh, was that ever prophetic? We adored Palm Springs. And the first time I went down there in 1971, what struck me was not the beauty of the place and the fabulous climate, was the social circle she had built up. I walked in the door, and I walked out the front door where the pool was, and all these people were there, as if she'd known them for 20 years. Lovely people. They became friends for life. And in fact, not that long ago, we were preparing a meal at home using an appliance that the Palm Springs gang sent Joy and I for our wedding 42 years ago. Slow cooker. So we loved going there. Now, for the 3 of us, Bevy couldn't do enough for us. I remember in grade 7, I was kind of too young for the grades that I was in through various situations, and I was having an awful time with Shakespeare in grade 7. I just didn't get the language. I thought, why didn't he just say what he wants? Why all this dancing around with the words and so on? Well, I was a little down in the dumps from all that. So my mom picked up on that. And the next day, there she was sporting a copy of Cole's Notes. And if you remember Cole's Notes, there were these little books with black stripes on them, and there was one little book devoted to each work of great literature. And she had studied this thing, and she had learned it, and she was explaining it to me, and she elucidated it and made it kind of bearable, the whole experience. That's the kind of thing. And then I remember in Palm Springs, it was funny, every time I would come, and I would come to myself, out on the bed before I put my suitcase on, there were little gifts. There was always a golf shirt. I think I have more golf shirts than most golf pros do. There was a golf shirt, but it wasn't something that they bought from Walmart. It was one that had emblazoned on the sleeve the pro shop that she made a special effort to get to. And next to that was a box of dates. No, not dates that she bought from Albertsons, but dates that she drove someplace from Hadley's that were very special. This is the kind of thing that she did. One final story. at least from my standpoint, and then I'll just touch on two things from Jeffrey. I'm sitting there in the living room in Palm Springs, and the phone rings. Now, I love old Hollywood, as did she. History of the movies, it's always been a passion. So I'm sitting there in the living room in Palm Springs, the phone rings, and I hear this gruff, oddly familiar voice. "Hello, Jim?" I said, "Yes." "Bill Demarest here." I said, "What? This is a joke." "Bill Demarest, your mom tells me that you like us old Hollywood guys." So I'm sitting there, and I see a smile on her face, and we're going on and on, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and of course, by the time we said goodbye and I kind of settled down into the chair, she's got a grin a mile wide. She'd been to a charitable event where she met Bill and his wife, Bill Demarest, and set this whole thing up because she knew that I would like it. Jeffrey, of course, will talk about his theatrical background and how my mom drilled him, worked with him in preparing for the part of Rainbow Stage. He nailed that part. He performed that part every night for the better part of a month, 1963, before 2,000 people, and that was the result of her work. Wayne, of course, came along a little bit later. She devoted so much to him. And I remember one final story before my time has come. Wayne, when he was about 4 years old, would sit in front of the TV and he watched Don Messer's Jubilee. He loved that show, something about the rhythms and the character. Well, shortly after, Don Messer and the team appeared in Winnipeg. This was a country, for American friends, a country group. They appeared in Winnipeg. And I don't have to tell you who the youngest audience member of the front row was, sitting next to his mother. Well, just in closing, there aren't many things that are indelible in this life, but the memories and the inspirations that Bevy gave us, for me, for all of us, most certainly are.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Jeffrey, please. Just like keep it in there.
Yeah, good.
Take it off.
Thank you. It's great.
You have rabbinic approval.
She was always there. If you're like me, you probably thought she always would be. That's why it was something of a shock for me to come up to the house yesterday, and there was no sign that she had made with the picture, and her sitting out front waiting for me to get there. She was certainly always there for us, whether it was making meatballs or roast beef or chocolate chip cookies or my personal favorite, duck à l'orange, taking us to doctors and dentist appointments. And I had problems with allergies, and she found an allergist and took me there every week for months as I became desensitized. I told people later on in life, when I became totally insensitive, I joined the Crown Attorney's office. Dedicated to us, buying us clothes, making our beds, making our school lunches, anything and everything we could have asked for, she was always there. When I come back to Winnipeg, of course, I hearken back to 1961 when she and my dad suggested that they were holding auditions for Manitoba Theatre Centre. Might I be interested in acting? And I think I was 8 or 9 at the time, and I thought, okay, sure. And she drove me over to this theatre in St. Boniface on Marion. And we didn't know the drill in terms of auditions, but I auditioned and I got cast. And then with Rainbow Stage, she'd run songs from the Music Man so that I could handle the audition and ultimately get cast in that. When I did CBC radio and TV, she would be there to pick me up from school and drive me down for the tapings or for the rehearsals and pick me up at night and run lines with me for that. But then we flash forward, and I had the very special blessing in 2011 and then again in 2017 that she on her own flew out to Hamilton to see me on stage again in plays that we did with the legal community. You want to talk about a blessing. Bookending half a century of theater with my mom's support. I couldn't ask for more than that. And Jim has already talked about the cards, the flowers, the gifts, money, anything, birthdays, special occasions, us, kids, or even just because. She was always there thinking about us. And in terms of, as Jim mentioned already, Palm Springs, Vegas, most recently Rancho Mirage just 3 years ago. Joanne and I went down there and stayed with her, and she was there on her own for several weeks, and the staff loved her. And she used the formidable negotiation skills that my dad used to call her the Tiger to negotiate a special rate for us. Of course they did that. She wore them down. And that's not to mention something that we in the family know. Bringing to the attention of restaurant staff if a meal wasn't up to her particularly high standards, to which we would remark, "Who says there is no free lunch or dinner?" She was always there for her beloved parents, Jack and Mary. They were as devoted to her as she was to them. The calls and the support and the times that we spent together and the deep love that they had, that they shared, and as Jim mentioned already, we were blessed to be able to see. We come from a very unique set of circumstances because grandparents on both sides were married for over 50 years, and our parents too. So that kind of love and stability is what was imbued in our home through all of our lives. She was always there for her extended family, as those of you will know. She would never miss a family function at Simca. If she had to make her own travel arrangements and be out there, she was there. She was always there and part of it and at the heart of it. And relating to all the family members of any ages. She simply loved being with them. She wouldn't miss it. She would not think of missing it. And she was there for her friends as well. She loved getting together with people, whether it's lunches or dinners, whether it was bridge games or parties, and she would keep in touch. And it could be friends that were close that she'd known for many years, and even friends of friends. There was a fellow that my dad had befriended, a wonderfully brilliant man in New York named Robert Dillenschneider. And Joanne and I got to meet him a couple of years ago, an exceptional leader in American public relations. She would keep in touch with him and send him gifts that she would find for him. And they had only gotten to know each other through limited contact and to some extent indirected. But she felt that she wanted to maintain that contact with him as he did with her. Why? That's the way that she was as an individual, how she lived her life. She was always there for you. But most of all, she was always there for Melvin. As Jim told you, they fell in love on the boardwalk at Winnipeg Beach. He was, if memory serves, still connected with the armed forces or the Air Force, and they had boardwalk games, and he showed her how he could win like boxes of chocolates, and the love was quick and deep. Now, I can tell you it was a mixed marriage. You didn't know this. It's a mixed marriage. He was from the North End, and she was from the South End. And they certainly crossed those barriers and had such a wonderful life together. I have to tell you that I don't really have a memory of them ever fighting or arguing, because they had support for one another in everything that each of them did. They loved activities together: golf, fishing, travel, music. My dad, of course, loved comedy, and my mom was his best audience and his loudest laugher. We all can hear that in our own mind's ear. But just even being together, and the respect that they had for one another. She respected him so deeply for how hard he worked and how creative he was. And he respected her for how exceptional she was in attending to every detail of the household and looking after him right to the end. I'll tell you something that I think epitomized the love they had for one another. And Jim and Wayne, I'll trust you know about this, but I'll bet a lot, I'm sure none of you do. To this day, and I looked at it again yesterday, there's an anniversary card that he gave her some years ago, and she still has it. It's still there on the dresser. And he inscribed on the back of it, he wrote, "To the best fisherwoman in the world, you caught me, didn't you? Love, Mel." She mourned his passing for every single day. And now, at last, she'll have some relief from that pain. But you know what? I think maybe I've misspoken. And I'm going to ask each of you to note today's date and time, because that doesn't happen to me very often. It's not really right for me to say that she was always there. She still is. Jim, Wayne, and I have all married women who have many of her qualities. the unstinting devotion to their husbands and to their children, that straight from the shoulder honesty about how they deal with everyone and how they expect that everyone should deal with them, the values that they place on quality without being extravagant, and perhaps most of all, the persistence to face adversity head on and power through it. Our mom lived her life with an independent spirit and with an energy that simply defied age. I'm going to close with this. I'm not going to resort to the cliche that says that you'll find a picture of someone in the dictionary beside a word that defines her. No. I'm going to give you the definition itself. The word is indefatigable. It means unwearying. Beverley Manishen was indefatigable. She is still there for us, and she always will be. We love you, Mom. Be at peace. May your memory be for a blessing.
Thank you so much. I'm going to continue now with the memorial prayer del Maleh Rachamim. El Maleh Rachamim Shochem Bameroimim Hametze Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah B'Ma'alot Kedoshim Kedoshim Uteorim Kezoyer Rakim Amazirim Ed Nishema Ed Nishema Tovavat Yaakov Masha She'alecha Le'olama בעבור שאנו מתפללים בעד הצקרת נשמת בגן עדן בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה לכם בלרחמים יעשתי ראיה וסדר כנבם לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים החיים את נשמתה אדוני ונחלתה ותנוח ושלום על משכבה ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To the soul of Beverley Manishen, who has gone to her eternal home, merciful one, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. Please join me now in the recitation of the words of comfort, the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal ve'yitgadash shemei Rabah ve'almad divrei chilutei ve'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'v'yom echon v'chayei dechol Beit Israel בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירם בעלמה וימרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל וימרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו אמן. המקום ינחם אתכם בתוך של רב לציון בירושלים, and God bless you and comfort you. And let us all say Amen. A couple of announcements. Immediately after the end of this funeral service, everybody is invited to partake the meal of consolation, and that is going to be at the Shaarey Zedek, 561 Wellington Crescent. Just remember that congregation Shaarey Zedek is following a very stringent COVID protocol, so you will have to show your vaccination ID, and mask has to be worn until you take your place on your table. Shiva will be private. Donations could be made to the congregation Shaarey Zedek Lidor Vador Capital Campaign through the website www.szfuture.ca. This is a beautiful way to honor her strong connection with the synagogues that could be traced all the way to the 50s. And I would like to continue now with the last step that we are going to do here at the cemetery, and that is to participate on the burial. According to the rabbi, this is also a beautiful way to show kindness, loving kindness to Beverley one more time. So I would like to invite immediate family first, and then everybody else present here is invited to come forward, have the shovel to participate in the burial. Thank you so much everyone for coming out. Thank you to all of you for tuning in this morning.